Okay, well, we'll just see if this microphone is working. I hope it is. We plugged it into the iPad adapter, so hopefully it's working. Hopefully you're seeing me live and you're hearing me. We'll get a notice in the chat room here in just a second to see if it's working. And then we will sign them on right about now. It's about 5 o'clock. Let's try that, see if that works. We're in. We'll wait for about 1.5 minutes after. Anybody out there? Are you saying I heard? Interesting conversing use of the. I'm waiting for my. There it is. Okay. As soon as it gives me the notification, that I can click in myself and see what's going on. Make sure in the chat room that you can hear me okay, and we should be going live any second with Revolution Radio. Make sure. Greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from the America Free Radio studios from an undisclosed location east of the Rockies. This is, we're also coming to you live through the Revolution Radio studios, which is part of freedomslips.com, freedomslips.com. So all you have to do to be part of that is go to freedomslips.com and you can be part of the program. So let me see. Yeah, okay, here we go. Good, nice and loud. I just wanted to make sure that the sound and everything was working okay tonight. I am using 2 microphones, so it should be nice and clear for everybody. Let me move my notes over here. Oh, good. Now everything's all arranged. Look at there. Everything's very high tech. We enjoy it. So let's get right into it because we have a lot of news to get to. And please send me questions in the YouTube live chat room. I can watch that live. And don't forget to tune in to Revolution Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at revolutionradio.com. We are in Studio A. You can also go to my website, which is americafreeradio.com, americafreeradio.com. I'll put the description in right down below. If you go there, you're going to see several buttons. It'll take you to the archives of Revolution Radio. You can also listen to Revolution Radio Live. There are call-in lines where you can listen by phone, and everything is for your convenience, and it's all free. Now, don't forget that this is the nation's largest listener-supported radio program, a radio network, and we need your support. So all you really have to do is go to freedomslips.com, click on the donate button, and make it a regular thing. $2 a month. Can you imagine 100,000 people giving $2 a month? What we could do? We could change the world for sure. All right, let's begin. We're talking about Ballots-R-Us. Ballots-R-Us, a lot of people don't know what that is because they don't hear me talk about it very often. They certainly don't hear it on other news broadcasts. But Ballots-R-Us is an organization that harvests ballots. They usually get them from senior citizens, either at nursing homes or retirement communities, or people that are living outside of state. And the Government Accountability Institute, also known as the GAI, they have a research director, and his name is Eric Eggers. He's the author of a book which is called Fraud, How the Left plans to steal the next election. He says the Democrats' plan for nationwide mail-in voting would send ballots to 24 million inaccurate and flawed voter registrations. The concern I have, he says, if we're trying to mandate national mail-in elections, the language that Nancy Pelosi and House Democrats inserted into the first version of the most recent stimulus package would be that we have such massive problems with the voter rolls in this country, Eggers said. So now we are going to be mailing ballots to people that authentically don't exist or are ineligible voters. This is the big problem. This is the big risk. Because once these ballots are in hand to the volunteer or to the professional worker that comes to harvest the ballot, anything can happen. A 2012 study by the Pew Research Center revealed that there are 24 million ineligible or inaccurate voter registrations on state voter rolls. This means 1 in 8 voter registrations are either no longer valid or they're invalid. People are 115 years old, or they're dead, or they have moved to another state and they've registered to vote in another state. So ballot harvesting is legal in the state of California, where mail-in ballots are turned over to armies of workers who canvass nursing homes and retirement communities. Those ballots are filled out and filed by Soros-backed companies and sent to precincts where Democrat candidates need votes to beat Republican opponents. Eggers said mail-in voting ensures voters associated with those flawed voter registrations would get the chance to vote in the 2020 presidential election. I quote again, if you have national mail-in ballots where the supervisor of elections are mailing ballots to everybody on the voter rolls, and we know per Pew Research Center statistics that we've got at least 24 million flawed or inaccurate voter registrations in the country. That's 24 million ballots that are potentially going to people with the wrong address, or to people that are dead, or to people that have double registered. Similarly, nationwide mail-in voting would almost certainly be tied to federal legalization of ballot harvesting. Right now it's only legal in a few states. In California it's legal. In North Carolina, not illegal, or not legal. So, and this is part of the problem. This is part of the problem. The other problem I'd have is another part that was mandated in the Democrat version of the stimulus bill, which would be the legislation of national ballot harvesting. National ballot harvesting. Democrats are so concerned about the necessity of social distancing, but by legalizing ballot harvesting, you're literally sending, in many cases, young, potentially asymptomatic carriers of the coronavirus to homes of these vulnerable populations, including the elderly and the infirm, who we all know are more susceptible to the virus, or at least susceptible to the effects of the virus. Everybody's susceptible to the virus, but 99.5% of the people that get the virus don't even know they have it. They get a little sniffle, a little achy, and then they're right back to work. And they're done. They've got their antibodies, they're good to go. But the elderly, their immune system's already had its butt kicked a number of times, and they're not prepared for this virus. They can't sustain the body's reaction to this virus. Now, in what's little more than an extension of ballot harvesting, the George Soros-funded Brennan Center for Justice is advocating for the use of drop boxes to collect ballots in November. So they're not even talking about sending the workers out there anymore to expose these elderly people who get their door knocked on. Hello, I'm here to collect your ballot. I know you're afraid to get out, but no worries, I'm here to help you. If you'll just sign your ballot and give it to me, we'll make sure it gets where it needs to go. Aren't we nice? Aren't we really nice? Well, now you don't even have to do that. You can sneak down to Ballots-R-Us's red box and you can slip your ballot right in the slot. The organization is advocating for wide-scale use of these mail-in ballots as part of what it calls a comprehensive plan. Anytime you hear the word comprehensive, anytime you hear someone in the government use the word comprehensive, especially if it's a lawmaker, you better put your back against the wall. Because that comprehensive suppository, it hurts like hell, let me tell you. Comprehensive plan to protect the 2020 election from COVID-19. I think COVID-19 is going to be long gone by November, but let's just continue with the article here. When the hard left talks about protecting something, rest assured, that's code for exploiting the targeted action. So drop boxes are being proposed to help in the collection of these mail-in ballots. No human involved. Just have this basically red box for Ballots-R-Us. California, Colorado, Oregon, and Washington already have drop boxes, but they are not always at official voting precincts. Oh my goodness, really? Where would they be put? Pray tell. And by the way, if you could make yourself to the precinct to put it in the drop box, why can't you mail it to make your way to the precinct to vote? Good question, huh? I always have good questions on this program. Using Operation Corona Scare as a backdrop, the Brennan Center presented a $2 billion budget to implement its detailed plan to ensure that the pandemic does not prevent a free and fair election. Oh my gosh, pardon me while I stick my finger down my throat. The budget directs $82 million to $117 million for the purchase and installation of drop boxes. I wonder who owns the Dropbox company. Probably an extension of Ballots-R-Us, I would say. Anyway, another $35 to $47 million for the operation and maintenance of the drop boxes from Ballots-R-Us, a subsidiary of Ballots-R-Us. Ballot tracking would get $4.2 million to set up a texting service for ballot tracking information, which will provide voters with reminders, confirmations of receipt, and confirmations of acceptance. Wow. The plan reserves millions for increased ballot printing in non-English languages. It looks to bolster online voter registration, implement same-day registration, and expand early voting. See, here's the way same-day registration. Somehow somebody says, oh, you know what? This election, it just snuck up on me. I know I've had 4 years, but I was high and I missed it and I didn't realize, but like today's election day and I haven't registered to vote. So, my vote counts too, doesn't it? I'm sober. So you make your way to the precinct, you stand in line with everybody else, you get up and they say, oh, what is your voter registration? What's your address? Well, you're not in here. But I'll tell you what you can do. You can step over here and you can fill out all the information and we'll let you vote today. What could go wrong with that? Yeah, my name is Fred Smith. Fred Smith, yes, and I live at 2355 Jones Street. Yeah, that's correct. What's the zip code here? Yeah, that's my zip code. What could go wrong with this? Well, not to fear. Because when the same-day registration is collected by the ballot worker, the actual voting booth worker, he's supposed to set that vote aside. And what that happens is then the election, it's all tallied, and if the spread between the two candidates is more than, say, 2%, let's say they're 3% apart, then you don't even accept the same-day registration. You don't even count them. But if the vote's close, like within 1%, then you go ahead and count the same-day registration votes. But now keep in mind, they're supposed to be set aside for 30 days. And what they do is they send out a postcard to 2350 Jones Street to Fred Smith, And the postcard arrives. Fred Smith gets it. He sees, oh, this is to validate my vote. Okay, so I take my pen and I sign my name, Fred Smith. Yes, this is me. It's already got the postage paid for. He slips it back in the mailbox. It goes back to the precinct, and they say, yep, Fred Smith lives there. That vote counts. But guess what happens? 90% of the time, that answer never comes back. What does that tell you? That tells you that that person either doesn't live at that address or he has no business voting in this country. That's what it tells you. That's what's supposed to happen. Let me tell you what actually did happen in North Carolina. In North Carolina, we had almost 100,000. Yeah, 100,000 same-day registration voters. Pretty crazy, huh? That's a lot. That's like a phenomenal amount of people that just never registered to vote today, but before in their lives, and all of a sudden election day came, and you know what? By God, I'm going to go register to vote today, and I'm going to vote. And so that's what they did. 100,000 of them. Can you imagine that? And guess what? Republicans won across the board. State senators, state representatives, across the board. Mayors, city managers, city councils. Republicans are winning everywhere. And we had a Republican governor who was an incumbent, who was doing a fantastic job. And everybody in the legislation loved him. But he lost by 30,000 votes. Guess where those 30,000 votes came from? Same-day registrations. And guess what they didn't do? They didn't wait the 30 days. They announced the election the next day. Well, Governor Pat McCrory, he could have fought it. He could have gone to court and said, wait a minute. You didn't validate these 100,000 same-day registration votes. We know from history that only about 10,000 of those votes will actually count. 90% are going to be thrown out because those people either don't have the right to vote or they don't live where they said they were going to live. They didn't return the card. Doesn't matter. Those 100,000 votes, every single one of them counted, and Pat McCrory was out. Rather than fight it, he said, and I think maybe it was the right decision, he said, we have a supermajority in the House, a supermajority in the Senate. My Democrat opponent is going to take the governorship, and he's not going to be able to get a damn thing done. And that's exactly what happened. Pat McCrory has a talk radio program in Charlotte, and the Democrat governor, crooked as he is, can't get anything done. I think it's a wonderful thing. Just to show you, that's what went on. So, you see, security for these mail-in ballots, it's critical, absolutely critical. It's not ever watched that carefully, but it's critical. For instance, I believe in the state of Washington that you have to, on the outside of the envelope, you have to write your party affiliation on the outside of the envelope. Now, of course, I'm not saying anybody at the post office would say, oh, Democrat, that one goes through. Oh, Democrat, that one. Oh, Republican, oops, I dropped that one in the trash. I'm not saying that would happen. I'm not saying it would happen when it went to the precinct that actually issued the ballots, right? That would never happen in Broward County, would it? Surely not. You wouldn't have them look on the outside of the envelope and say, yep, Democrat, Democrat, oh, Republican, Republican, and separate them out. And you know, we just don't know what happened to those Republican ballots. Oh well, every single ballot we found, that when that Enterprise truck backed up and dumped those ballots out in our doorstep, damned if every single one of them wasn't Democrat. How about that? Isn't that amazing? Huh? Just so amazing. Security for mail-in ballots is critical. Secure drop boxes could be installed at government offices or other locations to avoid tampering and bolster confidence in Democrat precincts. Deadlines should be extended so that all mail-in ballots are counted, while mail voting should be available to all. In-person balloting is still the most accessible and secure option for many Americans living in predominantly Democrat precincts. As for the concept of ballot harvesting, the Heritage Foundation calls it the tool of choice for vote thieves. Today, there are nearly 250 counties across the United States with more registered voters on the voter rolls than eligible citizen voters. How can that be? How can that be? There are also nearly 3 million individuals who are registered to vote in more than one state. In Illinois alone, close to 100,000 non-citizen voters were improperly registered to vote in the 2018 election. Hillary Clinton won just 57 counties in 2016. President Trump won 3,084 counties. But apparently, mysteriously, he lost the popular vote. Ballot harvesting will greatly influence all future elections for the Democrats, virtually destroying the republic through institutional voter fraud. All right. By the way, you are listening to X Squared Radio, coming to you live from an undisclosed location in Flagstaff, Arizona, through the America Free Radio studios on the Revolution Radio Network, which is part of freedomslips.com. All those links I'll try to post in the description down below, along with my personal website, so you can keep up with everything I'm doing, where I'm speaking. Sign up for my webinars. We're going to have a webinar the 18th and the 25th of April. Now, that's not two separate webinars. It's one webinar, but it's two classes. So if you sign up for the webinar, which is Second Chance Success Mentoring, basically gives you the tools that you need to set yourself up for success in the second half of your life. It's primarily for people over 40 years of age, because they're looking at things and they're saying, you know, I just don't have a 401k worth managing right now. And I only got about 25 years, you know, to get it on. So unless you're planning on starting a new career with a pension, you're going to work there 25 years and retire, this webinar is for you. It's going to give you the tools. It's going to give you the training. You're going to get a book signed by me and the opportunity to work with me as your mentor. So what I've been doing for the Fortune 500, helping them to retain or create over 10,000 American jobs in my lifetime, as well as saving or generating new profits for these companies. Instead of doing it for them, I'm now going to do it for you. And it's way more affordable than you think. A $47 webinar. Oh, you could pay the $249. You can come see me live if you want to, and pay for the plane ticket and the hotel and the meals and all that stuff. You're going to end up laying out about $1,000 to get. Or you can sit at home in your pajamas, not from the top up. Wear a shirt, please. But I'm just saying, you could take the webinar from me in the privacy and safety of your own home, and you can learn the things that I can teach you in the 5.5 hours of the course, and then have opportunity to work with me one-on-one. And I'll help you with anything. Make your business plan out, do your pro formas, help you make a patent application if that's what you want to do. We'll get it all done for you. You'll have my skills at your disposal. Just saying. All right. Anti-social distancing. By the way, if you want access to my notes, it's pretty easy to do. All you really have to do is sign up for my newsletter. Just go to brooksagnew.com, sign up for the newsletter. It's free. That means it don't cost nothing. And my staff will make sure that you have access to all my notes. Sometimes I have 50 pages of notes that I use to do these programs. And it means that you can have access to those things. Okay. I'm just looking at all the messages I have on all my electronic devices here that I'm improvising with, because you don't see my typical studio backdrop. This is a studio backdrop of a hotel in Flagstaff. Anti-social distancing. The soldiers are out. Matt Mooney, he feels Brighton police owe him a huge apology, and I agree. The 33-year-old says he was handcuffed at Donaldson Park in front of his 6-year-old daughter Sunday afternoon after police told him he violated the state's social distancing guidelines. Wow. Mooney told the Fox 31 Problem Solvers he refused to provide his identification to 3 police officers because he was confident he wasn't doing anything unlawful by playing t-ball with his wife and his daughter at the park alone. She's like, "Daddy, I don't want you to get arrested." At this point, I'm thinking, there's no way they're going to arrest me. This is insane. I'm telling her, "Don't worry, Daddy's not going to get arrested. I've done nothing wrong. Don't worry about it." And then they arrest me. They arrested the guy. Former Brighton City Councilman Kirby Wallen recorded much of the incident on his cell phone, where you can hear his voice narrate the scene. And I quote, "He's being taken by the Brighton police for playing softball with his daughter in an empty park," Wallen said. In an interview with the Problem Solvers, Wallen said, and I quote, "I find it hard to believe, with all the things going on in our communities, the only way to resolve a situation like this was to handcuff a father in front of his daughter." The sign at Donaldson Park said "closed," but in smaller print it reads, "in groups of no more than 4 persons. Parks remain open for walking, hiking, biking, running, and similar activities." Evidently, t-ball ain't one of those similar activities. Mooney was just there with his wife and daughter, said it was the officers who were violating social distancing guidelines. I call it anti-social distancing. During the contact, none of the officers had masks on, none of them had gloves on, and they're in my face handcuffing me, they're touching me, he said. Mooney said he was released after spending about 10 minutes in the back of a patrol car, but said he still deserves an apology. If we're going to go ahead and start arresting people for no reason in front of their 6-year-old daughter, you're going to cause more problems later on. That's true. Brighton Police posted a vague statement on its Facebook page Sunday night that made no mention of Matt Mooney or his arrest. What is that? I'm just looking, Festus. I'm looking. Hey, Brooks, have you had any time to invent? Oh, he has the word in and then vent. And I was going, what does that mean, invent? I haven't been in a vent lately. Oh, to invent. Look, here's the thing, Festus. I have enough in my blue notebook to keep 10 engineers busy for a lifetime. Do I have 10 engineers working for me? No. Why? No investment capital. I don't know what'll happen to my blue notebooks. Probably the same thing that happened to Tesla's when he died. But I have enough in my blue notebooks to keep 10 engineers busy for a life. I have patents, I have trade secrets, I have process patents, all kinds of stuff worth billions of dollars, but no investors. So I'm at peace with it, Festus. I'm at peace with it. All right, who's who? I mean, who's who? Who's WHO? Last Sunday, if you listen to America Free Radio on Sunday nights at the same time on YouTube Live, you would have heard this. Last Sunday, I exposed the tyrant Tedros for who he is. 2 days later, President Trump noted that the World Health Organization receives more money from the United States than any other country, and he placed it on hold. Boom. It's time for an accounting for Tedros taking orders from the Chinese government and George Soros. I quote, "We want to look into the World Health Organization because they really called it wrong. They missed the call. They could have called it months earlier. They would have known. They should have known. And they probably did know." Close quote. The president noted that the World Health Organization actually criticized his travel ban from China, which, by the way, made it a lot more difficult having the World Health Organization, to which we give, $480 billion, crazy amount of money. I mean, it would be one thing if the World Health Organization was helping people. if they were actually providing clean water for people, teaching them how to take care of their trash or their sewage or something to help people stay healthy. That would be one thing. I wouldn't mind the American government giving out money to help people like that and help nations be better and be more healthy. I would feel good about it, but that's not what's happening. That's not what's happening at all. I go on. Some restrictions can have the effect of increasing fear and stigma with little public health benefit. That's the WHO Director General Dr. Tedros said about travel bans just days after Trump banned travel from China. He criticized him for it. He said he was stupid. He said he was wrong about doing it. The restrictions have little effect on anything except increasing fear and stigma. So the WHO consistently sided with China over and over again, despite heavy criticism for their lack of transparency about the virus. And millions of people got sick because of it. Millions of people got sick because of it. He called for America to keep its borders open so millions of infected Chinese could travel here and deliver the weapon known as the Wuhan virus. So I'm just saying, maybe President Trump is listening to this program, or somebody on his staff is. They probably said, you know, I don't know if you know how bad a guy this Tedros guy is. He was a tyrant in Ethiopia, Somalia, and he singled out one ethnic group, and he denied them health care. Yeah, they had a very high infant mortality rate among this ethnic group. Why? Because pregnant mothers couldn't get prenatal care. He wouldn't let them into the healthcare system. So their babies died and mothers died. So when 15,000 of these ethnic groups decided to protest, guess what happened? Tedros' organization under his management opened fire on them, shot them, not 15,000 people, but shot into the crowd. And then he turned around and arrested 70,000 of them, 70,000 people in this ethnic group, and he sent them off to prison camps, work farms, where they were tortured and where they died. This is crazy. This is the guy that's running the World Health Organization. He took off his camos and he put on a suit and tie, and all of a sudden, you know, he's the guy. He's supported by Soros and takes orders from him and is deferential to China. So Trump said, look, it's a great thing when it works, but when they call every shot wrong, it's no good. It's no good. Either they're very incompetent or they're designed for one thing in mind, and that is to kind of be a health organization arm of the UN. And the UN is no friend of the United States. The United Nations is full of anti-American diplomats. So later in the briefing, reporters asked why he would freeze funding to the World Health Organization in the middle of a pandemic, and he said, I'm not saying I'm going to do it, but we're going to look at it, said the president. Well, I have a feeling that's exactly what's going to happen, because now he has the facts in his hands, and now he sees that maybe we don't need the World Health Organization. Maybe we don't need to pay for it. China pays like 48 million, we pay like 480 million. Or 480 billion. I don't know. It's a huge amount of money. Why don't we do our own health philanthropy? Why do we have to rely on these organizations that are corrupt, that funnel this money to all kinds of organizations and do all kinds of things that are anti-American? I don't know. All right. The New York police state. This is an important one. This is an important one. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo said a couple of days ago that the fine, that is the penalty, for violating the state's anti-social distancing rules, they're really social distancing, but I'm calling them anti-social because that's what it is. That's what it is. Anti-social rules during the coronavirus outbreak is doubling as he is doubling, not doubting, is doubling as he says too many New Yorkers are not taking the rules seriously. No kidding. Well, guess what? Governor? Same thing here in Arizona. What I noticed is the Walmarts are full and the hospitals are empty. Is it the same where you live? Is it the same where you live? Hospitals are empty and Walmarts are full. What is this, Festus? A UVC light bulb that will take care of the C19. Well, yeah, because UVC is very short wavelength light, Festus, like in the 220, 230 nanometer range. Actually, what happens is, I will demonstrate here. The photon of light in the short wavelength UVC range, it comes in and it smacks DNA at the double bond and it cleaves it in two. We call it photodimerization. It creates a free radical, which is reactive with other things, and the DNA is done. It doesn't divide anymore. It's called germicidal light for a reason, because it interrupts the DNA. Yeah, it would kill viruses, and it would kill bacteria, and it would blind you, and eventually would kill you. We have UVC, we used to have UVC in fluorescent light bulbs. UVC comes from the plasma that's generated by gasifying mercury. Inside of each fluorescent light bulb, I can only go this wide on the screen here, that glass tube is a drop of mercury. And there's a high voltage starter inside this. And when you flip the light on, the high voltage starter, it zaps that mercury and forces it into gaseous state. Once it's in gaseous state, being a plasma, it will conduct electricity. But it doesn't make high voltage after that. It takes low voltage, the regular 120 volts, at about 40 watts. And it keeps that mercury putting off photons in the germicidal wavelength range. Is that the light that comes into our room? No. Why? Because inside the glass tube, the glass is coated with what we call dope. It's coated with a white powder or a soft white powder. And what happens when the short wavelength light of the mercury vapor or the mercury plasma strikes that dope, it sputters off an electron. And when that electron that space is then filled, or that electron drops to fill in that lower energy state electron, that drop emits a new photon. And the new photon is in the visible light range. It's in the light that lights up your room. And you can stand it. It's just visible light. It's harmless to you. It's a much longer wavelength light. It's in, because it's white, it encompasses a lot of wavelengths, anywhere from 300 to about 800 nanometers, and that's harmless to you. That's just regular old daylight, less the short wavelength radiation of UVC. So that's where UVC comes from. Yes, it would be germicidal. Yeah, it would kill C19, but you'd have to wear, goggles, special UV blocking goggles around your house. It would keep it germ-free, your room, but it would be bad for your eyes. So don't recommend it, Festus. It would burn the cornea of your eye. Your eyes would actually get sunburned. They could heal unless the damage is too extreme. Sort of like, very much like looking into a welding arc. Have you ever done that, Festus? You ever welded without a hood? Guilty. We call it blink welding. You line up your electrode, and before you pull the trigger, you blink, and you make the weld while your eyes are closed. And if you do it very much, guess what happens? Your eyelids get sunburned. Done it. Been there, done it. Okay? It's okay. It's okay. 1 or 2 welds just to kind of tack something together, that's great. Then put the hood on, then finish out your welds. But that's the same thing. If you look into a welding arc, even if it's across the street, it's going to damage your eyes. Same wavelength, Festus, same wavelength, UVC. Good stuff. Yes, it does create a free-floating electron. We call it a free radical. Okay? When you split the double bond, you break the molecule apart, but you leave an extra electron on one of them. That's called the free radical, and that thing is looking to react with something, and typically it reacts with oxygen. Just saying. That's how polymers are made. Polymers are made with UV light. because that free radical joins up, and that's how you make your polymers. It's called photopolymer for a reason. Okay, let's get back to what we were talking about. You could put all the science questions you want in the chat room, and I'll answer them as fast as you can keep them come at me, but I want to finish my news story. New York residents can now face a maximum fine of $1,000 for not adhering to the social distancing rules. You ever been to New York? You ever been around Central Park, walked around Manhattan? Social distancing ain't easy, you know, because the Manhattan, it isn't like LA. You know, in LA, the sidewalks don't have a lot of people on it in Santa Monica, whatever, because most people are in their cars. Most people are on buses or light rail. There ain't a whole lot of walking around. But that's not true in Manhattan. In Manhattan, that's the way people get around, because it's expensive to park. And traffic is horrible in Manhattan. You just don't want to drive it. So what you do is you walk it. You get a hotel at 8th Avenue, and you walk to 5th Avenue. If you're at Trump Tower, you walk to the Empire State Building. It's a little bit of a hoof, or take an Uber or whatever, but I'm just saying social distancing is not easy in Manhattan. You can't space people out 6 feet in Manhattan. It doesn't work that way. When the weather's nice, everybody gets out. They're walking their dogs or their parrots or whatever it is they have, their cockatoos, and they're social people. They cram together in the crosswalks. Cuomo says, you don't have the right to risk someone else's life. Great rhetoric. It's great rhetoric. Might hold fine in, rural Oklahoma or out here in the deserts of Arizona. Not going to work in New York. He said, you don't have the right, frankly, to take healthcare staff and people who are literally putting their lives on the line and be cavalier or reckless with them. You just don't have the right. I'm so done with you, Cuomo. I'm so done with you. In New York, non-essential businesses have been closed. Really? I don't know what you do or what you've ever done in your business. It doesn't matter to me. None of it is non-essential. I don't care if you have a CBD store. I don't care if you sell used books. I don't care if you have a head shop. I don't care if you sell, women's underclothes. It's all essential to you, because that's how you pay your bills. That's how you make your house payment. That's your investment. That's your passion. It's essential. In my mind, the only non-essential people in New York are the freaking people working in government. Get rid of them. Send them home. In fact, all you rich and wealthy, all you people that have bunkers and secret places you can go out to and yachts and islands, why don't you just go ahead and go? Go ahead. Just get in your bunker, lock the door, turn on your air filtration system, and we'll take it from here. That sound like good enough for you? You're the one not essential. We the people, we're essential, or we wouldn't be here. I don't want to talk about the story anymore. $1,000 fine, my butt. All right. How much time we got? Oh, we got about 15 minutes in this segment. Keep those questions coming in the chat room. I like it. Let me take a glass of water here. Rescission. This is a good article. How to defund the global syndicate. You know who the global syndicate is, don't you? Yes? Show of hands. Have you not read Charm a Favor? Gosh. Go to my website, brooksagnew.com. Click on the link that says books or store. Just click there and read the book Charm a Favor. You know why you need to read it? Because guess what I'm doing now? Right now, today, I'm writing the sequel to Charm a Favor. I know you've all wanted it. You've been wanting a sequel to Birth, but I can't do a sequel to Birth. It's complete. It's the complete trilogy is all you need. But Charm a Favors now has a sequel. No, I'm not telling you the name yet. It's not time for that. I'm just saying you need to know who the global syndicate is, because this is how you defund them. Representative Brian Stile, he's a Republican from Wisconsin, yesterday, he introduced a bill to rescind, I'm so proud of this, I just really like this. He introduced a bill to rescind the $25 million granted to the Kennedy Center as part of the Congress's coronavirus relief package, following news of layoffs among the center's staff and musicians. Yeah, after they get the 25 million bucks, then they lay everyone off. Such great guys, such great guys. The Kennedy Center plans to furlough 60% of its staff on a rolling basis. The report on Tuesday has, let's see, they've already laid off 475 part-time staffers hours after President Trump signed the relief package into law. The center announced it would lay off the musicians of the National Symphony Orchestra. I wonder what they're going to do with that $25 million. You know, Trump was pretty smart, though, because he put, I think, Michael Huckabee and some other person on the board of the Kennedy Center just to make sure the money didn't get misspent. Anyway, I quote from Mr. Stile, "After this passes and you find out that the Kennedy Center is laying off people, that's almost the icing on the cake. The bill has 15 co-sponsors, including the minority whip Steve Scalise. He's the Republican from Louisiana that was shot by the Bernie insane guy at the baseball game. You remember that? When the only thing he had to hide behind was like second base, and this guy had a rifle, and Scalise's security team only had 9mm pistols. And they actually walked out there on that baseball diamond, muzzle to muzzle, well, across the grass, shooting at this guy with a 9mm pistol from like 250 feet away, and he has an AR-15. That's not really fair. In fact, those guys got shot too, but not before they put a few rounds in the crazy guy shooting the Republicans that were hunkering down in the dugout. Anyway, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi literally held the bill up for days to get her pet projects. Interesting, she'd used the choice of words fiddlers, because it was the fiddlers, the violin players, all the musicians at the Kennedy Center that got laid off. That's just crazy. Meanwhile, musicians at the orchestra will receive their last paychecks for the foreseeable future on April 3rd. You know what? It's interesting to me that this money gets laundered through these organizations anyway. But the reason I ran this story is because when the Founding Fathers established the Constitution in the 1787 Convention, one of the things that the power that they gave the president cannot write law. He is the executive branch. Him and the vice president. He can't write law, but he has the power to veto, which means if he doesn't like the law, he can veto the law, correct? Yes? You understand that? Well, all well and good. Even if the president says, you know what, I don't like it, I'm gonna veto it. Congress can then override the veto with a 2/3 majority. Because ostensibly what we wanted was, we didn't want a tyrant, shutting down everything, but we wanted the people to be able to hold government accountable. So we made it possible for Congress, 2/3 of Congress, to override the veto of the president. It's worked well for a couple hundred years, until this. What happened was laws stopped being 1-page or 2-page or 3-page laws. Like, we're gonna have a law, we're gonna pass this bill allowing, late-term abortion. Well, the president would just veto it because that's a single law. But that's not how they do it. What they do is think tanks. These are professional law writers, professional bill writers. They are paid money to sit in front of word processing programs and write what are now affectionately called omnibus bills. Now, an omnibus bill can be 6,000, 7,000 pages long. Yeah, like you could take a college course, 4 years, you're not going to see 6,000 pages. 4 years of college, you get a degree, and you're not going to see 6,000 pages in print. This bill, the way they write them now, inside the bill will be hundreds and hundreds of laws. And some of the laws, they don't take place right away. They come in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 8 years later. They're all timed to phase in and create a new kind of legal structure. And of course, the agencies, departments, bureaus, and administrations, they're the ones that administer these laws. They write the regulations, the fines, the fees, the registrations, the enforcement actions. All those are done by the agencies. So you have paragraphs and clause and subparagraphs and subclauses, and you have rules and final rules and opinions. All of that comes in these big, thick, and you're talking, I can't even get it on the screen. Let me back up a little ways. 6,000 pages would be about this much, maybe a little bit more. What are we talking? 10 reams of typewriter paper or printer paper. You don't use typewriters anymore. I'm so old, typewriters. But the problem is the president can't veto that. He can't veto that. Why? Because stuck in the middle of that is all the funding for national defense. Stuck in the middle of that is the guts, the lifeblood that mainstream America relies on to survive. So if he vetoes the omnibus bill, the Navy sinks, the Air Force is grounded. These are the kinds of things that are not acceptable. So what we have been pushing for a long, long time, since the days of Reagan, 1980, we've been pushing for line item veto. What line item veto does is it allows the president to go in and say, I love this bill, this old 65, I like it, except for these 50 pages. There's 10 laws in here I don't really like. And I'm going to use my black highlighter. That was my problem when I was in college. I used a black highlighter. You could take my black highlighter and I'm going to strike these things out and I'm going to initial it and then I'm going to sign the bill. But that's not the way it is. Now, if you support the Convention of States, by the way, it's cosaction.com, cosaction.com. I'll put the description right down here in the bottom. You can go to Convention of States and you can support it with money or votes or volunteering. There's all kinds of different ways you can help your state captain. And believe me, there's one in your state, in your county probably. You can give the president the line item veto. And this allows the president not to write law. He still can't write law, but he can go in and he can fix these crap laws that are being sent through. That's what this legislation is. That's why I ran this story. Because Congressman Style, what he's doing is he's on a congressional level doing line item veto. He's taken that $25 million and he's putting a black highlighter through it. Is he going to get it passed? Not a chance in hell. You know why? Because there ain't no Democrats are going to support it. It's basically a stunt. He's just going to stand up in front of the microphone and he's going to talk about it. Why? Because it's an election year. And all this stuff kind of sets up rhetoric and an atmosphere that allows Democrats to walk away. Hashtag walk away. Hashtag walk away from Democrats forever. So that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. Line item veto. That's what's happening here, and that's why I ran that story. We're going to take a quick break in about, 1 minute. We'll take a quick break. We'll let Revolution Radio run their commercials. You YouTubers, we will just hang out. I'll read your chats, try to respond to them. I won't be able to talk over them unless, let's see if I can figure out a way to mute my microphone here. I could probably cover it up, couldn't I? Put my hand over it. There are high-tech ways of doing everything. We can figure out a way to do this. So we'll take a quick break in about 1 minute and all will be good. I want to talk about the death rate scam. This is something that is gelling, and it's primarily coming about because of some high-profile sicknesses with COVID-19, otherwise known as the Wuhan virus, and Operation Corona Scare. We've been talking about that for a little while, for a couple of weeks, and it's important that you know what's going on. In announcing the most far-reaching restrictions on personal freedom in history, Boris Johnson followed the scientific advice that he had been given. I'm a recently retired professor of pathology and an NHS consultant pathologist, and have spent most of my adult life in healthcare and science. The simplest way to judge whether we have an exceptionally lethal disease is to look at the death rates. This is where the corruption comes in. Are more people dying than we would expect to die anyway in a given week or month? Statistically, and I'm a professional statistician, we would expect about 51,000 to die in Britain this month. At the time of writing, 422 deaths are linked to COVID-19, so about 0.8% of that expected total. On a global basis, we'd expect 14 million to die over the first 3 months of the year. The world's 18,944 coronavirus deaths represent 0.14% of that total. These figures might shoot up, but they are right now lower than other infectious diseases that we live with, such as the flu. Not figures that cause really drastic reactions. We have never done this before, not with this small amount. At the time of the writing, the UK's 422 deaths and 8,077 known cases give an apparent death rate of 5%. This is often cited as a cause for concern, contrasted with the mortality rate of seasonal flu, which is estimated to be about 0.1%. But we ought to look very carefully at the data. Are the figures really comparable? Most of the UK testing has been in hospitals. That means that people are really sick if they get to a hospital. That's not a good sampling. There's a high concentration of patients susceptible to the effects of any infection. They call it reinfection or infection rates in a hospital. Any testing regime that is biased or based only in hospitals will only overestimate the virulence of an infection. Also, we're only dealing with those COVID-19 cases that have made people sick enough or worried enough to get tested. There will be many more unaware that they even have the virus, with either no symptoms or mild ones. There's only two ways to do this. One is to 100% infection, or 80% of the herd to get infected and get over it. Once that happens, this flu's done. It'll never reoccur because 80% of the herd is already immune to it. It can't get going to cause an infection. There aren't enough people to create the viruses because we're the ones that actually create the viruses. Quick break. Be right back. Don't know how to turn the microphone off on the phone, so I will. There's no way to mute it, so I'll speak softly, but keep the chat room going, and we'll bring Revolution Radio back on when the time is right. What do we got in here? Let's see. Oh, Ashley, good to see you. Very active in the chat room. Thank you very much. Cindy G, good to see you there. Catherine. Wow, there's new names everywhere. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Boo says not many cars driving around to ticket, so now they're ticketing people for tailgating. That's exactly right. It's funny. Planet X Hunter. Ooh, very nice. Same here in the UK. Right on. Oh, by the way, I want to give a shout out to Noella Cuevas. She's in Spain. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning there, and we're so glad that you're joining us here tonight on YouTube Live. So a shout out to you. Very nice to have you here. Noella Cuevas, welcome to America Free Radio. We're so glad that you're here. Some people are finding me on other media out there, Facebook and other broadcasts with Laura Eisenhower or Suzanne Ross or Doc Skinner, and I very much appreciate you coming to listen here at America Free Radio. So glad to have you. Please leave comments in the chat room on YouTube Live, because other people can see that you're interested. I will do my very best to respond to you after the program and try to keep you guys up to date. Chick, good to see you. Oh, good. Sounds good. I appreciate that. Fame Miller. ¿Cómo estaba, Brooks? Estoy bien, gracias. Estoy bien. Buenas noches. Let's see, who else do we have here? Very nice, very nice. Okay, good. Good active chat room. I appreciate that very much. Revolution Radio will come on in about 2 minutes, and we'll bring them back on in this ear over here, and that way we can stay with everything. Brenda says, hi again. Good to see you out there. All right, very good stuff, very good stuff. How do you like this Monday and Wednesday nights on YouTube Live? Is this a good venue for everybody? It's good for me. It works for me. I was doing Facebook Live for a while, but didn't work out all that well. A lot of people really responding to the YouTube, and I really, really appreciate it. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you so much. Don't forget that there is a top chat down below. All the money that's raised here on America Free Radio will go toward the North Pole In-Earth Expedition. By the way, please go visit the website, nippie.com, NPIEE.com. We've made some new announcements where the actual voyage has been postponed till the year 2022. It's going to come up quicker than you think, because 2020 is turning out to be the year that never was. I hate it. I don't like it. I want 2020 to be roaring, just like it's supposed to roar, but it's not happening. And we need every single month of the year to raise enough awareness and get enough subscriptions going so that we can pull off this voyage, which is going to cost about $2.7 million. I'm a little light right now. I just can't pay for that myself, but we'll get it. All we need is about 100,000 subscribers, as cheap as $5 and as high as $49. It depends on what you want to do. If you want to access the videos we're going to begin posting, that's fine. You can watch the videos. There's all kinds of stuff at SciSpy TV by going through Hollow Earth TV. If you want to watch our webinars, that's a $19 contribution, and our staff is putting together some very good webinars, question and answer. We'll have some experts from the universities on there throughout the year. It will be really, really cool to see. You'll learn stuff you'd never learn, even if you enrolled in a class, you wouldn't learn it. And then the $49 level will give you access to the live streaming. The live streaming is important because we're going to do a dry run this summer. Later on this summer, I think it's mid-June. And next year, actually when we begin putting forward the voyage itself. We're back. Okay, I can put this microphone back in. All right, welcome back, Revolution Radio listeners. We are also live on YouTube. If you want to watch us and interact with us in a chat room, you can do that. So welcome back to the final segment of X Squared Radio, coming to you live through the America Free Radio studios somewhere in Flagstaff, Arizona. Coming to you through the Revolution Radio Network on freedomslips.com. freedomslips.com. Revolution Radio is the largest listener-supported radio network in the country. We rely upon you and you alone to keep the lights on. Don't feel bad. Don't feel bad if you're listening for free. I don't want you to make you feel guilty, because the federal government's taking money out of your paycheck every single week, and they're giving it to NPR. Yes, that's true. National Public Radio is getting some of your money every single paycheck. Do you like it? Hell no, you don't like it. So all I'm saying, I'm not trying to make you feel guilty or make you feel obligated in any way. All I'm saying is that You could take $2 a month, $2 a month, and you could make it a regular donation to Revolution Radio just by clicking on that donate button. 100,000 of you a month, and Revolution Radio could change the world. You would no longer have to listen to the crap that you hear on mainstream media or fake stream news, because you could get the truth here. We have so many hosts on this network. It takes 2 studios, Studio A and Studio B, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's great content right here, all live, no repeats. Do it. Do it. Okay. Let's go back and look at this a little bit more, because we're looking at statistics and we're looking at the way Operation Corona Scare has been crafted to basically shut down the world. Has it done it? Yeah, it has done it. 187 countries are doing nothing. They're doing the same thing I'm doing. You know where I've been all day? And pretty much in my PJs all day. Do I like it? No, I don't like it. Not a bit. So there's another potential, even more serious problem with this. You see, the way that deaths are recorded, if somebody dies of respiratory infection in the UK, the specific cause of the infection is not usually recorded. I mean, it isn't COPD or whatever. No. Shortness of breath, they suffocated, they died of, low blood oxygen content, they suffocated. There's all kinds of things. But, they're not really specific. The specific cause of the infection, usually not recorded. They had bronchitis. We don't know really what caused it. Did they have strep throat? Did they ingest some, a ham sandwich while they were drunk and they breathed it down their lungs and it got infected? I don't know. They don't list that. So it's only if the disease or the illness is a rare, notable disease, then maybe they'll put that down as the cause of death. So the vast majority of respiratory deaths in the UK, they're recorded as bronchopneumonia. You died of pneumonia. It happens all the time. Same thing in the United States. We have adult pneumonia that's difficult to kick. You know why? Well, there are 2 reasons why. One is, each time you get pneumonia in your lifetime, and you'll have it whether sooner or later in your life you're going to have it as a kid, a teenager, a young adult, or even a middle-aged adult, your lungs get scarred because wherever the pockets of pneumococci clump up on your lung, they actually kill that part of the lung. It never breathes right again. The alveoli are ruined. The toxins that are put out by the bacteria, they're poisonous. They go straight into the bloodstream, and you get toxemia, and it can kill you. Fortunately, when you're young, your immune system's pretty good, or you go to the hospital, you get some antibiotics, and you kick that virus, or you kick that bacteria. So you lick it. But each time you get it, it's a little bit harder to beat for a couple of reasons. One is the scarring of the lungs, and your immune system gets worn down with age. The second is, remember I told you take that antibiotic, like that broad spectrum Z-Pak or some other erythromycin or something like that if you're allergic to the penicillin brands, maybe Keflex or something like that. That's another one that people give. You know what that stuff does? It kills off the bacteria, most of it, some of it, a few cells, they live. But the histamine reaction goes away. All the congestion and the inflammation, these are the reactions that your body has to this attack of the pneumococci in your lungs. All that goes away, and so you're able to heal yourself. You're able to recover from it. But guess what stays behind in your lungs? Yeah, the few bacteria that didn't die off from taking that antibiotic. In other words, a few of those cells are like superbugs. They're like superbugs. The next time the conditions are right in your body and your lungs fill up with fluid and the anaerobic bacteria known as pneumococci can begin to bloom again, guess what blooms with them? The superbug. And each time you take that antibiotic, you're running a risk that only the baddest ass pneumococci are going to survive. And those are the ones that are going to kill you. Of course, they don't really get in that position till after you're, say, 65, 68, 70, 75 years old. You get a 75-year-old that develops pneumonia, you have a serious problem. A serious problem. So we don't really test for flu. I've had it half a dozen times in my life. I'm sure of it. I had the aches, the pains, the diarrhea, the everything. And it lasted 2-3 days. Sooner or later, the fever breaks, your body recovers, and you pull out of it, and you end up going back to work a couple dress sizes smaller. I don't recommend it. It sucks, but we do it. But we don't really test for flu. I call up the doctor. I go down to the doc in a box, and I say, oh, I'm aching. I got a backache and a sore throat, and my nose is running, and I have a headache. You, my friend, have the flu. Take these, go by the pharmacy at Walmart and pick these things up and go home and stay covered up. And if you're sweating, uncover. If you're not sweating, cover up. Drink plenty of fluids. You know the routine, right? But do they test you for flu? No. They don't take a test because they can see you have the flu. So other seasonal infections happen, strep throat in the wintertime and all that, because you're inside and people bring over the grandkids or their kids, and you know how kids are, they carry the plague. You're going to end up with it eventually. You can not see the kids. Don't bring the kids over in the wintertime. I don't want to get sick. But you know what happens? They bring them over anyway, and they're touching stuff and running around and coughing and stuff. Next thing you know, you're dying. So if the patient has, say, cancer or leukemia, well, that's cancer, or they have some neuron disease like ALS or something, some other serious disease, that will be recorded as the cause of death, even if the final illness was a respiratory infection. It means UK certifications normally under-record deaths due to respiratory infections. Now, you look at what's happened with the COVID, this corona scare. Everything's changed. Everything is the opposite. I don't care if you were run over by public transportation. If you tested positive, if your body in the autopsy tested positive for COVID-19, I don't care if the tire marks are right across your chest, cutting you in two. You died with COVID-19. The list of notable diseases has been updated. This list, as well as containing smallpox, which has been extinct for, well, forever, just about, conditions such as, anthrax, tuberculosis, brucellosis, the plague, rabies. They've now amended this list, strangely enough, to include COVID-19. Not the flu. No. The flu is still not listed as a cause of death. Just COVID-19. That means every positive test for COVID-19 has to be notified. In a way, it would just not be for flu or other infections. It don't matter. Cancer, tuberculosis, doesn't matter. Complications due to COVID-19. That's the news. That's what you hear on the fake stream news. In the current climate, anyone with a positive test for COVID-19, otherwise known as the Wuhan virus on this program, will certainly be known to clinical staff looking after them. If any of these patients dies, staff will have to record the COVID-19 designation on that death certificate. I don't think the box is that big. I don't think you could put died of a train wreck and they tested positive for COVID-19. Oops, too many letters. You have to shorten that to just COVID-19. That was the cause of death. You understand? Now you get it. There's a big difference between COVID-19 causing death and COVID-19 being found in someone who died. Because you could die of COVID-19, or you can die from it, or you can die with it, or you can die of it. You know what I'm trying to say? If we take drastic measures to reduce the incidence to COVID-19, it follows that the deaths would also go down. We risk being convinced that we have averted something that was never really going to be as severe as we feared. This unusual way of reporting COVID-19 deaths explains the clear finding that most of its victims have underlying conditions. The rest of us, it isn't that bad of a flu. Not that bad. So we're going to get over it. I have a lot more in my notes that I want to cover on this, so I want to move on to another thing because this is really important. You know that recently I published the book Asteroid Mining: The Future of Energy, right? And I published it in color. I've never published a book in color before, even though I have now 11 books in print with 7 bestsellers. Black and white's good enough, but not for this book. The reason is the asteroids, the ships, the technology, the stuff was so good in color, and it just didn't come out well in black and white. I spent the extra money to publish the book in color. So the book cost a few more dollars, but this is a book that goes right next to that big black book you have on your yes? No? You don't have it? Gravity? You know the book I'm talking about, right? The big black book. It's about this thick. It's called Gravity. Probably costs about $100. Oops. I dropped the mic. Hold on a second. I didn't mean to drop the mic. That big black book, right next to it goes Asteroid Mining: The Future of Energy. I published the book. I announced the publication of the book. And I swear, somebody with the Trump administration is listening. Maybe it's because of my Space Force hat right here. It's triggering some Trump algorithm out there, and they're paying close attention. Because President Trump signed an executive order Monday night for moon mining. Yeah, right out of the book. Right out of the book. The water, ice, and other lunar resources that will help the United States establish a long-term human presence on the moon are there for the taking, the White House believes. President Donald Trump signed an executive order April 6th, 2 days ago, establishing U.S. policy on the exploitation of off-Earth resources. That policy stresses that the current regulatory regime, notably the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, allows the use of such resources. This view has long held sway in U.S. government circles. For example, the United States, like any other major spacefaring nation, has not signed the 1979 Moon Treaty, which stipulates that non-scientific use of space resources be governed by an international regulatory framework. Not going to work. You find it, it's yours. Your company goes up there and core drills a shipping container of helium-3 worth $100 million. Guess who it belongs to? You. You get it. It's yours. And you can bring it back to Earth and you can sell it to the highest bidder. That is a freaking gold rush. You get it? You get it? It's a gold rush. That's why we didn't sign the 1979 Moon Treaty. And in 2015, Congress passed a law explicitly allowing American companies and citizens to use the moon and asteroid resources. But did the federal government get out of our way? No. They stood in our way. In fact, Barack Obama ended the space program effectively. He ended the shuttle program. We stopped using our own rockets to put people in space, even to the International Space Station, until SpaceX came along. The executive order, called the Encouraging International Support for the Recovery and Use of Space Resources, has been in the works for about a year, a senior administration official said during a teleconference with reporters on Monday. The order was prompted, at least in part, by a desire to clarify the United States' position as it negotiates with international partners to help advance NASA's Artemis program for crewed lunar exploration, the official added. Now, some of the companies that I've talked to that are building asteroid mining equipment as we speak, I'm talking about real private enterprise, they're not so excited about this executive order. I spoke to them a couple days ago and they said, well, you know, this is really excluding American companies, and it's encouraging international companies to come in. I'm not reading it that way. The way I'm reading it is President Trump realizes that one government cannot afford to pay for lunar mining because there's a lot of infrastructure that has to happen first. You don't just say, you know what, there it is, off you go. It doesn't work that way. The gravitational field of the moon is very anomalous. It's very lumpy. It has a lot of high density asteroids that are embedded into the crust of the moon. And so just orbiting the moon, not that easy. You're being bumped all over the place by turbulent gravity. Turbulent gravity. So what's missing on the moon, which we have here on Earth, both for airplanes, ships, and cars, is GPS. There's no GPS on the moon. Now, what we can do with the Earth-based GPS is we can extrapolate it. We can use the side of the Earth that's facing the moon as reference points. But keep in mind, that's 220,000 miles away. So you don't get that much resolution. What you need is a GPS set of satellites orbiting the moon. That's what you need, a set of GPS satellites orbiting the moon. Now, there are three components to this. You have the little satellites, the little CubeSats. You have a Earth or a planet-based reference system that the satellites link to so that the grid that's around the moon is linked to the actual surface of the moon so that you can drive around or fly around the moon and know exactly where you are. And the third component is the transmitter. The transmitter system that links to whatever's moving on the surface, around the surface, or what we call cislunar, which is the space between Earth and the moon. Why is this necessary? I'll tell you. Just ask the Indians. Late last year, the Indians launched a space probe. Everything went as planned because, the Indians are very smart people. They launched it into low Earth orbit. This went around the moon, around the Earth several times. Everything was on schedule. A few days into the program, it left Earth's orbit and went out to the moon. It orbited the moon a few times. And then the lander disconnected from the orbiter and headed down to the surface of the moon, where it promptly splatted. Yep, it hit the surface so hard it didn't even leave anything but a wet spot. Done. That was the end of that space program. And you're thinking to yourself, but wait, we did all the hard stuff. We launched, we got into low Earth orbit, we went from Earth to the moon, we went into lunar orbit. The easiest part, landing on the moon, we screwed it up. We splatted. They're not the first ones to do that. Why? Because there's no navigation system between the orbit of the moon and the surface of the moon. Missing is the infrastructure. So the infrastructure has to go up there first. And if you're going to put the infrastructure up there, it's going to take a lot of money. You're probably talking about several $1 billion to build a GPS system around the moon. Now it's a lot smaller, and there's not a lot of space junk around the moon to get in the way, so we can use a lot of experience and a lot of lessons learned from what we've done wrong in low Earth orbit around the moon, or Earth. We can use that experience to do it right the first time around the moon. So that should work pretty well, but somebody has to do it. You think a private company is going to put that GPS system up there? Well, maybe, but it's been tried here on Earth. Just last week, we reported on a company called OneWeb. OneWeb was a private company here on Earth that was going to put up a grid of satellites around the Earth in low Earth orbit to provide internet. Yep, little tiny CubeSats, hundreds of them, put into a grid around the Earth to provide internet to rural areas, where the rural areas cannot get internet very well. They have to use DirecTV, which is just sucks. You have to use your telephone, and it's a mess. It's a mess. It never works right. They were going to be the first ones, private company, and they were going to make money at it. But, of course, Operation Corona Scare went into operation. It forced the stock market down, which reduced the price of their stock. They couldn't borrow the money because SoftWeb decided not to meet the capital call in their infinite wisdom. And OneWeb had no choice but to file Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So do you think OneWeb's going to put those satellites up there? No, they're not. You know who is going to do it? Yeah, SpaceX. That was their biggest competitor. What happens to all the satellites that OneWeb put up there? Well, they'll be acquired, they'll be reprogrammed, they'll be repurposed, and OneWeb may or may not come out of Chapter 11 bankruptcy. We hope that they do. We hope the market recovers and SoftWeb comes to its senses and lets loose some of that money and keeps OneWeb alive. Maybe a private company will put a GPS system around the moon. More than likely what will happen is it will be an international conglomerate. One company can't afford to do it. You're talking maybe 600 tiny satellites put in orbit in a grid around the moon. You're talking about points of contact, North and South Pole, and maybe a few equatorial positions to link that orbiting grid to the surface, because you have to overcome the Lorentzian errors. I'm not going to, don't have enough time to go into that, but Lorentzian errors occur when you have a moving set of data points trying to locate a moving set on the surface of itself. You have to have the ground-based systems to link the two together so that the moving object inside the field of moving objects can overcome the Lorentzian errors. It wasn't supposed to work, but it does. And then you have to have the transmitter. That's got to be powered by something. It could be powered by solar energy, of course, but you got to remember the moon goes dark for days at a time, right? The dark side of the moon, light side of the moon, you understand that? Or the solar systems have to be put at the poles, which means you're going to get tangential solar light. You have to put towers up in the air or put them on the peaks of mountains to be able to catch the solar radiation all the time as the Earth and the moon make their rounds, and the Earth or the moon rotates on its axis once every 28 days. So that mirror or those satellite or solar panels are going to have to rotate once every 28 days to stay aligned to the sun. Or you can use the helium-3. If you use the helium-3 on the moon for energy, now you've made the next jump in technology. Who is going to core drill this solid helium-3? Who is going to develop the helium-3 fusion system to create the energy? Right now, we've kind of sort of done it. We've taken helium-3 and deuterium, and we've fused them together, kicked off the proton, but it takes a tremendous amount of activation energy to make that happen. Once the activation energy is achieved, then the reactor can keep itself going, but you got to have deuterium to mix with the helium-3. Now, helium-3 can be melded with helium-3, yes, theoretically. It hasn't actually been done in a way that's exothermic enough to keep the reaction going itself, but theoretically it can be done. And the protons that kick off can be managed electromagnetically. The point is, once that fusion technology is perfected, the moon is colony ready. Who puts that infrastructure in place? That's the question. That's why Trump wrote the executive order, because he knows it's going to take an international coalition to make that happen. Now, some marvelous things are going to happen, and you'll read about it in the book, Asteroid Mining, the Future of Energy. But once fusion technology with helium-3 is commonplace, by the way, it puts off no radiation unless you're actually inside the reactor. The radiation is proton related instead of neutron related. Neutrons you can't do anything with except stick them to some metal like lead and gather them up and then toss them in the trash somewhere. But protons can be electromagnetically gathered and used to transfer electricity. The point is, once the fusion with helium-3 takes place, you now have fusion rocketry. And when you get to fusion rocketry, you now can cut the travel time from the moon to Mars to a little over 2 months. Right now it's a minimum 7 months, probably more like a year. And you have a very narrow window because you have to do the Hohmann maneuver. Why do you have that blank look on your face? just get the book. The Hohmann maneuver covers the fact that you have the Earth orbit and you have the Mars orbit. Now, in the Earth orbit, you have Earth going around the sun in its orbit, right? In the Mars orbit, you have Mars going around the sun. It takes about twice as long, about 748 days to go around the sun. So you're going from orbit to orbit. Now, the idea is to jump from Earth orbit to Mars orbit and orbit around Mars, right? You don't want to miss it and, keep on going out there to Jupiter, do you? No. Or to Saturn? No. You don't want to hit the asteroid belt, unless you want to do it on purpose. So it's called the Hohmann maneuver, Hohmann. It is designed to jump from Earth orbit to Mars orbit. And you can only do it a few months out of the year, a few weeks out of the year. There's a window of opportunity, and you have to meet that velocity. So you can do it, but it takes about 7 months to make that jump at our current technology. But with fusion rocketry, we could do it in way less time, which means, guess what? You now opened up Mars to colonization. It's all in the book, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And here's the great thing about it. It's all profitable. Hell yeah. That's what I'm talking about. If you turn free enterprise loose on this, you get governments out of the way and you let these corporations slug it out, merge, acquire, partner up, do joint ventures, whatever it takes. There's profit there. Not just on the moon. The helium-3 alone is going to make, the first company that does it will be worth trillions of dollars overnight. But once you get the fusion rocketry together and you get to the asteroid belt, there are more asteroids there than we could use in the next 10,000 years. There's enough energy, enough water, enough metal in the asteroid belt that we could create functional colonies on the moon, Mars, and beyond, and feed the Earth with clean energy forever, without ever drilling another hole into our planet, without ever pumping another thimble full of oil to burn in a gas tank. Not needed anymore. We can use it to make plastics, drugs, coatings, all kinds of things which the Earth would have thousands of years of supply instead of barely 100 years if we keep shoveling it into our tanks and burning it. And you have now made it possible for the human race to survive and prosper. The moon is not the final destination. Everyone knows this. As Americans prepare to return humans to the moon and journey on to Mars, this executive order establishes U.S. policy toward the recovery and the use of space resources. Not just water, not just minerals, but energy. Lots of it. Lots of energy. President Trump has shown considerable interest in shaping U.S. space policy. In December of 2017, he signed Space Policy Directive 1, which laid the groundwork for the Artemis campaign. The Artemis campaign is well explained in the book as well. 2 other directives have aimed to streamline commercial space regulation and the protocols for space traffic control, because it's going to have to be done. That's why the Space Force is so important. And Space Policy Directive 4, which the President signed in February of 2019, called the creation of the Space Force, the first new U.S. military branch since the Air Force was stood up in 1947. A lot of people ask the question, why is it necessary? I have 3 whole chapters on the Space Force. Why the Space Force is needed to prevent piracy, cyber terror, and establish the high ground. Because I have always said this since I was very young, he who controls the moon will control the Earth. So it's a good thing to have. Yes, good evening, Bomar. Welcome to the program. Good to see you out there. Ooh, Booty Yogi. Or yoga, Booty Yoga. Very nice. First time I've seen you out there. I'm so glad to have you there. Dr. Strangelove, good to see you back. Ashley, what is that? I really don't think they'll ever let an independent company do it. What do you mean they? Who's going to try to stop them? You think some military would go up there and stop them? See, what I think would happen is a private company would go up there, they would core drill, they would export the helium-3, and then pirates would take it. That's what I think would happen. That's why you need a Space Force. That's why. I don't think private industry can be held back. Why? Because there's profit. You see, I think what President Trump did in the signing of this executive order, I think he just started the next Homestead Act. Do you remember the Homestead Act? Did you ever see the movie Far and Away with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman? You remember that movie? You remember when they were all kind of lined up with their horses and their wagons, and the Union Army was there with a flag, and they waited for the time of day to come, and they dropped the flag, and everybody took off across the fields of wherever it was, Oklahoma or Nebraska or Kansas or something like that. And they were looking for that perfect plot of land, just the right, high ground with a nearby river, and these areas were staked off, I don't know, certain sizes, whatever it was, 640 acres or whatever it was. That was the Homestead Act. What did those people have? Nothing. They had nothing but a wagon, sometimes a horseback, and a woman, and that was it. And they went out there and they put their stake in the ground, and they built a cabin, and they planted their crops, and they raised their kids, and America was born. America grew up after the Homestead Act. This is the Homestead Act for space, private industry. And what will happen is there will be people that will sell everything, including their servitude. I don't think it'll come to that, but they'll sell everything to get on those ships and get to Mars and get to the moon. I don't mean the surface of the moon. I think that's not really possible. First solar storm would wipe out a colony in a matter of an hour. But you could go inside the moon. Plenty of volcanic vents inside the moon. It's in the book. Your mind will be blown once you see how big these things are. Did you know that there is a volcanic vent that we've already mapped from orbit that's big enough to put 4 New York cities inside of it? Yeah. Once you're in there, once you get light and water and oxygen, and by the way, once you have water, you have fuel, right? Hydrogen, oxygen. Got to figure it out? You have limitless possibilities, because inside the planet you can create an atmosphere. Now, it might not be as dense as it is here on sea level. It could be, but it could be like it is here. We're at 7,000 feet here in Flagstaff. I get around okay. It took a little while to acclimate, but in a month's time, I'm not going to be able to tell the difference between here and sea level. My body will acclimate to it. Same thing on the moon. Now, somebody asked me the other night, yeah, so how much are you going to weigh on the moon? Well, I weigh 0.1 metric tons on Earth. But on the moon, I'll weigh about 50 pounds. 50 pounds is what I'll weigh on the moon. Now, it's just enough gravity that all the plumbing and everything is going to work just fine. Now, I'm an adult. It would take a long time for me to atrophy. I can take zero gravity for a year. People do it all the time in the space station. They stay up there for a year, they come back to Earth, they eat a little bit of Wheaties, and they're as good as new. Different if somebody gets pregnant. If somebody gets pregnant on the moon, you got to get that person off the moon and back to Earth as quickly as possible. I mean, that day if it's possible. Because there's one thing about a fetus, when it's growing, every single day is a critical day, a critical point in the development. If something doesn't get built that day, it never gets it back. You don't go back in the 6th month and say, by the way, back there in the first 6 weeks, we forgot to do this. It doesn't work. You have to have the conditions right to develop that fetus. So if somebody gets pregnant on the moon and you don't get them off the moon, that child never coming to Earth. That child is a lunar child. The bone structure, the cellular structure, the cranial thickness, everything about that child will be lunar. Will it survive? I have no idea. There's a lot of DNA that we don't know what it does in the human body, and maybe under other gravitational and rotational and star location conditions will develop a totally different being. In a few generations, that lunar child, that lunar race will never be able to come to Earth. It would be like us going, well, not quite, to Jupiter. Jupiter has 64 times the gravity of Earth. We can't even take 3 gravities. 2 gravities is a little difficult. I mean, if I weighed 500 pounds, I'd have to have a wheelchair to get around. I could barely lift my arm, with a spoon to my mouth, because my arm, instead of weighing, 25 pounds, would weigh 100 pounds. Can I curl 100 pounds? Well, twice maybe, but, in a little bit of time, my arms are going to be about as big as my thighs, because then I'm going to need the muscle to get that spoon to my mouth. The point is, I'm not going to be able to survive. I'm not built to take 3 gravities or 4 gravities or 5 gravities or 6 gravities, which is what a lunar child would have to be able to withstand coming to Earth. That's the difference. That's why a lunar colony is going to be totally different than an Earth colony. It's going to be totally different than a Mars colony. It's 68% less on Mars, whereas it's 1/6 the gravity on the Moon. It's 68% less on Mars. So I'd weigh 32% of my current weight. So I would weigh somewhere around 80 pounds or 70 pounds. Yeah. And, you bet I'd still be able to dunk a ball on a 17-foot rim. But still, I think a Martian child would have a difficult time coming back to Earth. It would be hard. I don't think the bones could take it. I don't think the vertebrae could take it. I don't think the muscles could take it. I don't think the cranial thickness would be able to take it. They'd have to have some special exoskeleton to give them extra strength to be able to come here to the Earth. It would be hard to do. This is a heavy gravity planet compared to those 2 planets. I'm just saying, it's a big possibility. Now, if you watch the TV series The Expanse, there's a whole nother race, a 4th colony, because you got Earth, you got Luna, you have Mars, and you have asteroid belt. Now, the asteroid belt people, they're all weightless. So generation after generation of weightlessness, you can't take a planet at all. You can only exist in the weightlessness of space. That class of beings in the Expanse, they're called belters, like asteroid belt. And they call everyone else in the solar system that they deal with inners, because they're inside the belt. These are people that live on planets. So belters have to take special steroids to build up their bones. It's quite painful to be able to live on a planet. It's just one of the technical ways that they overcome it in the series. But the point is, you develop 4 different races. Earth, which at the time has about 20 billion people living on it. Luna, which is an aging colony. Mars, which is a growing colony going through terraformation. And the belters. It's a long way in the future, but it's a possibility. Science fiction's always a possibility. All right. Free press. You remember me talking about the Political Action Committee on Sunday called Free Press. The Federal Communications Commission is made of 5 members. The majority of the members are from the party that holds the White House. During the Obama administration, obviously it was Democrat. So what the Obama administration tried to do is they tried to use the FCC and use their majority in the FCC to take over the internet. And what they tried to do, they always use these really cool names like free press, free press. They use the name net neutrality. Internet neutrality sounds wonderful. It's wonderful. All right, neutral. We want it neutral. We don't want it biased. We want free press, free press. Well, it was anything but. We were a few days away, about 1 week away, from the United Nations taking over the internet in the United States. Or it wouldn't have been a good thing. Not at all. It would not have been neutral, and it would not have been free. It would have been censored, and it would have been totally geared to preventing programs like this one from ever even existing. Not what you want, believe me. now that President Trump, and by the way, the reason it didn't happen is because of one guy on the minority side. His name was Ajit Pai. Ajit Pai. It's an Indian name, but he's an American. And he was the minority member of the Obama Federal Communications Commission. Now the commission, they went ahead and passed the regulation because they can do that. They had the majority and they could do it. But Ajit Pai alerted us as to what was going on. And what happened was we were able to thwart that. We were able to keep that from happening. We couldn't reverse it, but we could keep it from happening until President Trump became president. When that happened, Ajit Pai ended up leading the FCC, and of course the majority went back to the president, and we rescinded that. So the Office of General Counsel and Media Bureau rejected a petition by the progressive group known as Free Press. Free Press is funded by George Soros. I don't need to tell you what their agenda is, but this happened a couple days ago because what Free Press wanted to do is they wanted to weaponize the agency against broadcasters and conservatives in order to censor political speech. Free Press recently petitioned the FCC to censor broadcasters from showing President Trump's press conferences on the coronavirus outbreak. I quote, "When the president tells dangerous lies about a public health emergency, broadcasters have a choice. Don't air them, or put those lies in context with disclaimers noting that they may be untrue and are unverified." That's what this Political Action Committee, Free Press, wrote in its petition. And certainly the FCC has a duty to rein in radio broadcasters that seed confusion with lies and disinformation. Really? The FCC denied the petition in a letter to the Free Press group, contending that the proposal misconstrues the Commission's rules and seeks remedies that would dangerously curtail the freedom of the press embodied in the First Amendment. The FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr said in an interview last week that the petition is a dangerous and sweeping attempt by the left to weaponize the FCC against broadcasters and conservatives and politicians. The FCC chairman, Ajit Pai, that's who I was talking about, Agitpai, not apple pie, but pie like PAI, said in a statement Monday that under his administration, the agency will continue to protect free speech. Here's what Ajit said, quote, "Under my leadership, the FCC has always stood firmly in defense of Americans' First Amendment freedoms, including freedom of the press. And so long as I am chairman of this agency, we always will. The federal government will not and never should investigate broadcasters for their editorial judgments simply because a special interest group like Free Press is angry at the views being expressed on the air, as well as those expressing them. In short, we will not censor the news. Instead, consistent with the First Amendment, we leave it to the broadcasters to determine for themselves how to cover this national emergency, including live events involving our nation's leaders. Under my leadership at the FCC, we've always defended Americans' First Amendment freedoms, including freedom of the press." And I have here the text of it, but don't have enough time to go through it all. The point is that the FCC does not and cannot and will not act as a self-appointed, free-roving arbiter of truth in journalism. The FCC will not discourage broadcasters from airing breaking news events that involve evolving circumstances during a global pandemic. The Free Press petition misinterprets the agency's rules. So this time, George Soros and his organization called Free Press, which is anything but free press, is denied. And hopefully with the 2020 election will continue to be denied. A little bit more science. Do you know what a white dwarf is? I am not a white dwarf. I'm not a white giant either. I'm kind of somewhere in between. Be serious now. Astronomers have detected two stellar corpses whirling around each other, and they might be producing gravitational waves. What is that? March 14 falls in Pisces. Ah, that's right. That's right, it does. So white dwarf stars are what become of stars like our sun, because you really have to be about 4 times the size of our sun or bigger in order to have an event called a supernova. 4 times the size of our sun and smaller, like down to the size of our sun, just a regular old main sequence sun, this is what happens. When they run out of fuel, they stop exploding with the fusion reaction that we see up there in the sky all day long, and gravity begins to win the battle, and the star begins to shrink. Because there's no more hydrogen to fuse, it's now all turned to helium, otherwise known as a helium star. Maybe some helium fusion will take place, but it's not very likely. When they run out of fuel, they turn into leftover hot cores. We call these white dwarfs. So for many years, researchers have predicted that there should be binary or 2-object systems made up of white dwarf stars, according to general relativity. 2 such masses orbiting one another should emit energy in the form of gravitational waves. These are ripples or disturbances in the fabric of space-time. Now, this is not the discovery of gravitational waves, you've already done that. Rather, it is the discovery of this binary system, like 2 stars orbiting around one another, which may be a source for gravitational waves. But not only will this study advance our understanding of these systems and gravitational wave sources, it'll also be important in validating the efficiency of an instrument that we're going to launch in 2034. Now, I've already told you about the LIGOs, right? The Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatories. There are 3 of them. There's one in Hanford, Washington, there's one in Livingston, Louisiana, and there's one outside of Pisa, Leaning Tower of Pisa, Italy. I'm going to go visit that one in June. So I will have visited all 3 observatories that are on the planet. In 2034, they're going to launch a 4th one. And this one's called the Laser Interferometer Space Antenna. No, I don't have enough time to explain to you how they work. If you want to know, you need to see my lecture on remembering the future. Sign up for the webinar. Sign up for the webinar. I have a great film on how it works, and I promise to explain it. I'm having one on the 18th, and the second class for that is on the 25th. Go to my website, brooksagnew.com, slide over to the webinars, click on the webinars link, and sign up. It's $47. It's a great class. I promise you will enjoy it. That's going to launch in 2034, and with that, we will be able to look at these gravitational waves from 4 different points, and that LISA will be much more sensitive because the mirrors are going to be further apart. On Earth, we can only get the mirrors about 4 kilometers apart. After that, the curvature of the Earth is too far away. So these tunnels are perfectly straight as a laser flies. So they start out at pretty much ground level, and 4 kilometers away, they're way off the ground. So these tunnels have to be supported. And the concrete, it's just an amazing facility. If you're standing on the ground, you can't even see the end of the tunnel. It goes so far away. It's insane. It's just laser straight. But in space, they can get a lot further away. So in a new study identifying and exploring this binary, researchers at the Center for Astrophysics at CIA at Harvard, they have detected for the first time a binary white dwarf system made up of 2 white dwarf stars. These are the helium cores I was telling you about, that are orbiting one another. And their orbit period is just over 1,200 seconds. Yeah, that's about 20 minutes. It takes 20 minutes for these stars to go around one another. And it's the first gravitational wave source of its kind ever identified. Theories predict that there may be many double helium core white dwarf binaries out there, and this is what's making the gravitational noise that we're hearing with these antennas. Very, very, very cool observatories. The system whose orbitable period is the shortest period of all detached binaries ever found. It was fairly tough to spot. This binary had no light curve. It was only putting off the gravitational waves. It couldn't detect a photometric signal because they don't put off light. They don't put off light in the wavelength that we can detect. So instead of using a photometric study, which looks like, light itself, it looks at different spectrums of light or radiation, they only looked at the electromagnetic radiation that is in the form of gravitational waves. And these are the only observatories that can detect them. And we only have 3 of them, and we're soon to build a 4th. The crazy thing about it is we're not discovering a new source of energy or anything. So the several $100 million that have been spent on these observatories is purely for science. It's quite fascinating to go to these facilities and look at the amount of money that's been spent, all on a dream of Dr. Kip Thorne. If you read his book, Black Holes and Time Travel, or Time Travel in Black Holes. But it's a big, thick book. Dr. Kip Thorne wrote it. Very, very fascinating, easy read. If you like reading science stuff, you won't be able to put it down. It's a great book. This was a dream of his, and he was, I guess, charismatic enough to be able to go to Congress and get the money. And the 2 facilities that I've already visited are quite fascinating, absolutely fascinating. I got lots of pictures of me in the control room. It looks so official. I liked it. It was really, really fun. Anyway, it's not going to be a binary forever, because you know what's going to happen. Slowly but surely, these stars get closer and closer and closer together, and they will form one star. The orbit of this pair of objects is decaying. Gravitational waves that are being emitted are causing the pair to lose energy. In 6 or 7 million years, they will merge into a single, more massive white star. That's going to be pretty fascinating to see. Listen, don't forget to tune in on Sunday. Sunday is going to be Easter Sunday, and I'm going to finish my Easter Sunday / Palm Sunday message that I began last Sunday. I promise you're going to enjoy it. It's going to be the entire final hour. And I think the nation really needs this. So I want you to come, same time, 8 p.m. right here on YouTube. And instead of 2 hours on Revolution Radio, will be 3 hours on the Truth Frequency Radio Network, which is also coming to you through TalkStream Live. And we will discuss the higher points of Easter and what it really means and why it is so important for us right now. Because America right now is stirring in its tomb. And the big question everyone wants to know is, are we going to roll over or are we going to rise? We'll see you next week right here on X Squared Radio.